think we're ready to go. Julia, thank you so much for being patient and joining me again for another collab, part 2 of our Nightwish journey. So how have you been?
I've been good, real busy, but good. I'm super excited to be here because we had to put it off for a little while, and then now we're back.
I know we're
ready
back.
for
We're
round
back.
two.
For everyone who has been asking and messaging, that's actually on me. Trying to balance the whole work life thing and do the YouTube thing on the side has been a little bit more tricky than I thought. So Julia as well, thank you for being patient and dealing with me while I kind of got it all lined up. But we are back and very excited, and we are doing another Nightwish song called "While Your Lips Are Still Red." This was actually the plan from the get go. We wanted to do one video for your channel, one video for my channel, and luckily there was still some great songs that people want to see that we both haven't done.
Yes, well, I mean, you've absolutely smashed through the Nightwish, so I've got a long way to catch up. But I'm going to get through all the Nightwish songs you have.
Every time I think I'm getting towards the end of the catalog, I get surprised by another album and another bunch of tracks. So I'm sure it'll be never ending. But very excited about this one, and can't wait to get stuck in. So you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right then, people at Wimbledon. I had to say that too. We live in troubled times. Everybody's seen that in the news and all that and blah, 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 blah. Everything we hear is bad. So, what I'm telling you, if you have loved ones, girlfriends, boyfriends, wives, husbands, children, grandparents, dogs, cats, whatever, canary birds, or pit Martian, kiss while your lips are still red. Sweet little words made for silence. Not talk, young heart for love, not heartache. Dark hair for catching the wind, not to wail the sight of a cold world.
We've officially made it to our first pause. I think we're doing well so far. I am a massive fan of this man over here. As we pause on Thomas, he is a fantastic structural engineer, and he doesn't get enough credit as a player. He does this thing, as it's quite a theme of his, where he is able to play music that sounds very hopeful and very sad at the same time, and a lot of it I think is to do with the separation of his hands. So on his left hand is doing the chord work, and that has a kind of synth effect on it that sounds really hopeful, and it feels like it's building into something special. And his right hand, which is doing the lead piece, sounds really sad. It's a very special kind of simplistic approach to getting those two emotional pieces across, and then to have him line up. And this is probably something that you'll know a lot more about, but I'm a huge fan when those lead pieces line up with what the vocal phrasing is doing. I think it just fits really nicely. I know it's a very delicate start so far, and there hasn't been too much singing, but what do you think of kind of Marco having his moments in the spotlight again?
Well, I mean, it's just great that I'm able to hear Marco by himself, because often I just hear him doing a lot of those like power vocals, like the lines that are underneath floor and they're part of the build in the music, as opposed to hearing him as a soloist by himself and being able to explore more of the subtle artistic things you can do with your voice, which is what I'm hearing him do here. So you're absolutely right with that. So the melodic component of what is happening on the piano is then matching the melody of the song, and I'm really liking almost the tentativeness of how Marco is delivering those lines, because it meets sort of that hopeful but sad sense that you are getting from that music. Because if he overdid that, if it was too full, it would clash, it wouldn't sound right. But he's very, very soft. He's still in his first register. It's just a very light setup, and he's balancing it with enough sort of resonant or the correct placement if you want something to come across as almost twangy or pingy, however you want to interpret that sound. He's putting that in the right spot so that he can still sing soft and have other little like breathy elements coming through, a little bit of breaking element in his sound quality, to have that coming through and for us not to lose the words. There's that tentative, almost sweet element of his voice that I've never heard before, because I've only ever heard him do these really strong vocal lines, either in contrast to floor or underneath floor singing. So this is that's really cool to be able to hear him finally in that context.
You've got a really good point there. I think there's probably one other song where I've heard him be really delicate and soft as an approach to it, and it's called The Islander. I'm not sure if you've had a look at that one yet, but it's a remarkable song as well.
I haven't yet, no.
Whenever I talk to you, it feels like I'm going back to school, and I just learn a lot. I wanted to know if you can give me some education around when you say things like in his first register, second register, like where is the gap between that? How do you kind of know when he's crossing over into those different elements?
Oh, okay, that's kind of like a thesis. I could write a thesis on vocal registration. In a simple way, you have, it really depends on who's actually deciding which is the register. As the singer, it will feel slightly different. So you'll be able to feel whether you're in first, whether you're in second, whether you're mixing, whether you're in third. So first register generally tends to be around where your speaking voice would be. But because he's very, very light, it's almost like there's a lighter quality to that speaking voice. He's not going up into a soft Mickey Mouse voice, which is often what happens if you go straight to second register. I'll give a little example. So, the Mickey Mouse voice is up here. You're in second register and it sounds a bit ridiculous. So, you have that Mickey Mouse voice there. This is more of a mix. So, the sound is still going up, but you can still hear that there's enough talking into it that it sounds lighter, but it's not this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's that quality change. So even though he's in first register, which is basically a speech register, so where you would normally be talking, it has that weight, that feel to it. He's just doing a lighter version of that. So first register generally is your modal, your speech register, and is in contemporary, odds are you're going to spend the majority of your time in first register, and second is just an extension of that. And you generally might be mixing a lot more if you are going to take up a lighter sound, or if you're belting, you're probably going to mix as opposed to flipping fully to second. Although men do flip to second register, we call that like falsetto, but falsetto is a whole other can of worms that I don't really want to open, because there's lots of ways you can interpret falsetto, and that could be a whole video all on its own. But yeah, first register, mostly your spoken register. We also call it modal register, and it's that speaking feeling, and he's just doing a lighter version of that.
Well, there you go. Like I said, every time I talk to you, it's back to school. So thank you very much for helping me out with that one. Sometimes I find myself very tempted to talk about vocals, and I remember, stay in your lane, Chase. You're not Julia, stay in your lane. Let's go back a bit and
you still
continue
know
with
stuff.
the song. A little bit, enough to get by.
You still know stuff. Comment on the things you feel confident in. Don't hold back just because you're not a vocalist. Gosh, I comment on music, and
Listen,
I'm hardly an instrumentalist. Like...
Okay, let's continue and see what we get to. I'm sure it's going to be building. It's almost 5 minutes of a song, so I'm sure we're going to go places with him.
Dark hair for catching the wind, not to wail the sight of a cold world. Kiss while your lips are still red, while he's still silent rests. While bosom is still untouched, I'm there, hold another hand, while the hand's still without a clue, drown into ice while they're still blind. Then while the night till height, the withering dawn.
I am going to stop there because that's very interesting for me. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to mess that up and get a better look at that.
I wanted you to pause as well.
So a couple of things. First of all, nice to see Kai coming in with those padded sticks. It's obviously a softer song that requires more delicacy. So even the percussion pieces, he's going to be doing lighter work. It almost sounds a bit more orchestral, where you have those really slow build-ups on the cymbals, the rides, the crashes, that kind of thing. But if we look at Troy, and I'll go back just one more step there, is there anything he can't play? First of all. Second of all, he seems to be using what I think is an EBO, and that is essentially a little unit that you can use which has a pickup in, and it's basically a circuit that forces the strings to vibrate. So instead of picking them with your plectrum, as you would do, it tries to replicate the sound of a bow on strings like you would do with a violin or a cello. So what you get with that is the real special part about it. And I'm hugely against when people use things like this to be a bit gimmicky and for no reason. Here it's really good because when you use that and you're generating the sound of a bow, you don't have the hard hit, so your attack on the notes is very slow and your decay is very slow. So quite often that note feels like it's drifting into the place of the next one, and there's this continuation theme to the lead work that he's doing, which is very, very cool.
Sorry, I must admit, that's so interesting that you mentioned that, because I was getting this feeling of suspense. Like I'm suspended in the music, like it hasn't quite landed anywhere. It's just sort of drifting on through. So that's really interesting that you mentioned that it has that particular effect on the sound, because that's what I was getting. And I was like, it just sounds like almost when a piano has a suspension pedal on it, it doesn't sound like anything fully like sets down completely. So that's so cool to know that is a thing for guitarists. That's really cool.
Yeah, and there's another part to that, which is what Thomas is doing. Some of the chords he's playing are ringing out and they're sitting on top. I'm forever speaking about placement in mixes, and you know, I won't say that there's any kind of scientific element to it. It's more of a feel. But if something is a higher frequency, it feels a bit higher up, and if you have a spatial effect on it, it feels further back. And you can kind of, that's why I'll move around when I'm listening to things, because I'm trying to find where all these pieces are. And quite usually with Nightwish, when they have these live recordings, they are quite good quality. So things are panned visually. So if someone's to the left or right of the stage, they start to push a bit of the mix that way. Not 100%, but a little bit that way. Still very delicate with the vocals, though. They haven't kind of pushed it into a place of that belting that we're used to hearing from him. I don't know if it's going to go there, but it's a lot of confidence from a band to be able to go, we're going to take 2 minutes. I know there was a vocal spoken piece in the beginning, but we're going to take 2 minutes and just be really delicate about the approach to this.
Interesting, because for me, the vocals actually got more exciting because he was changing his placement on so many different phrases which reflected the lyric. So if we actually went back, I'll show you. If you go back to sort of where we went from after we stopped before.
Yeah, let's go over here, because I think this is going to be, it's about 30 seconds back, so this should do the trick. Let me play this and then we'll stop again just after.
Yeah.
Kiss while your lips are still red, while he's still silent rest.
Like there.
On bosom.
So even how he approached the word rest, it's so much softer compared to when he put a little bit of weight in the beginning of the phrase. So if you go back again, you'll hear that sort of weight contrast between the beginning of the phrase. It's only a couple of words where he puts a little bit more weight into the sound, and then he hits rest, and it gives you this feeling that he's almost like laid down and the phrase is resting. So if we go back and...
That's so awesome. I'll go back one more just to make sure we get the right lead in. It's so much that I don't ever think to listen to, because I'm trying to listen to all the music that I never give the vocals the kind of respect they deserve. And it's just because that's what I'm comfortable with. That's why you're here. Okay, let's have a listen to that again.
Catching the wind, not to wail the sight of a cold world.
So super soft.
Kiss while your lips are still
A little bit heavier.
while he's still silent rest. My bosom is still untouched. I'm laying hold another hand,
And then there.
while the hand's still without
So-
a clue.
That's definitely evolving.
So what he just did there on the start of the line that ends in rest, you could hear how he put a little bit more weight on the beginning of the word in that phrase, and then on rest, it was like it was being gently set down. And then all of a sudden in this next line, he's increasing the dynamic not through belting, but by putting his resonance and shaping the sound slightly differently into this kind of place here. So by doing that, it gives it a more presence of sound and that interest of contrast. There's this contrast that's happening in his phrases, and you hear singers who generally don't belt a lot, they tend to be very good at this. It's these tiny little articulation and placement decisions that make them really strong storytellers. So for this, his choices are just, they're reflecting the lyric and they're giving this, like, the lyric line life, if that makes sense. Like, it makes me feel like it's alive, and that is really cool to hear. In all honesty, it's the soft ballads that will expose someone's artistic thinking for what it is. And I know that sounds brutal, It's the same with instrumentalists. I found the moment you have to slow something down, the moment something has to be soft and your interpretation is the only thing that can keep someone's interest, that's where you find out how they think creatively and how they think artistically. So, I mean,
You couldn't be
it's just
more
such a
right.
musical way of phrasing it. It's, yeah.
You couldn't be more right with that. A lot of people think that when you move into the ballad areas, particularly with musicians like this who are so ultra talented and can play with such intensity and speed and style, that when you slow it down like this, that is where you get that exposure, because quite often people assume that slower is easier to play, and it isn't. In fact, to keep that melodic rhythm and timing of what they're doing, and you'll hear little bits that Thomas does. He almost bounces on the keys very gently to kind of keep that rhythmic element going. He's not playing full hard notes on it, but you're completely right. That's where you kind of see, when you strip away all the glitz and glam, you get to see who the true creative thinker is, and how they approach the song. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Musicality is everything. So I always have I say a giggle, I cackle when I hear people go, I'm choosing a ballad because it's easy. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
ha!
No, good luck with that one, yeah. All right, should we continue
keep going
and
now.
see where this one goes?
Yeah.
Drown into eyes while we're still blind. While the night till height, the withering dawn. First day of love never comes back. A passionate hours never wasted one. The violin, the poets play, every thawing heart plays your theme with care. Kiss while your lips are still red, while he's still silent rest. A bosom is still untouched. I'm vain. Hold another hand, while the hand's still without a tool. Drown into eyes while they're still blind. Low while the night still hides the withering dawn.
Okay, I gotta stop there because it's definitely shifting into a much more powerful place, and I'm going to go back quite a few steps here because I want to make sure that we get that transition.
Yes,
First
please.
thing, musically, when Kai comes in with those drums, it's exactly what I'm talking about slower music sometimes being more difficult to keep that timing in essence, and there was a slight drift off. There was a very slight drift off, not too noticeable, but the minute that the bass and vocals realigned for the second phrasing, you could hear it really powerfully connect, and then everything was perfect again. And I'm always impressed by, one, just the tone of Marco's bass, and just how he's able to get such a beautifully clean tone that has the slightest of drive on it to add a bit of that power and emphasis, and the pulsing of it. So you'll hear him play the bass in a way that emphasizes some of the words he's saying, but also connects and kind of glues the keyboard to the drums. And for me, bass is such an underrated instrument, but there is something else special happening here, and that is the ultra talented Floor. I think Marco's probably the only person in the world who can say that Floor is his backing singer. But very interested to see what you think about her starting to come into the mix here.
I must admit, because I've heard Floor sing a little bit more than Marco, obviously, I've heard Floor significantly more than Marco as a vocalist. She's doing a very, very good job of balancing underneath that sound without overwhelming what he's doing. And it's setting itself up to be really, really well balanced with the tonal changes that Marco's actually doing. So I must confess, I'm focusing a little bit more on Marco in this particular instance. And one of the things that I liked that he did was, do you remember earlier where I mentioned that your first register can be taken up into a mix?
Yeah.
And you sort of have to keep that weight there, because if you go fully to second register, the tone changes a little bit. So when he starts to make that really metallic sound, there's actually two different sort of levels of weight that he's putting into that quality there. First, when he's ascending so that he can get the notes, it does become a little bit more metallic because he's starting to mix, and yet it's still not a full belt the first time he does it. He's just doing it to keep this balance, this seamless feeling between his lower notes ascending up into those higher notes. if he went full out, then we would lose the impact of when he actually then goes into more of a fuller belt where you get a little bit more of that vibrato, tiny little bit more of the distortion that Marco likes to use. He's not using a lot, but if we listen to the first little section when he starts to mix, it's very clean. It's not a heavy sound at all, and yet it is still that like first register mixing up as opposed to second register mixing down. So I'm excited by the fact that he's making these choices, because it's very, very easy. And I see it in a lot of contemporary singing to be like, I can build here, and then they hit it at 100, not realizing that if they went to, 85 first, that 100 is a hell of a lot more satisfying, 8 bars down the track. So it's, I'm really liking his choices here, but also the fact that where he's placing it is not forcing his larynx to strain for the sound. I'm really appreciating that, because there have been times before where I've heard Marco belt and I've gone, yeah, it's like, you can tell he's gunning for it. He's really going for it, and that it costs something. Whereas in this case, he's singing like a soloist, a true soloist, where he's in 100% control of what he's doing. And that's just, it's awesome, because sometimes when people are used to singing backup, they go to sing solo and there's none of that sensitivity there. So that's exciting from a vocal perspective. But yeah, Floor's awesome. Floor's beautiful.
Floor doing floor things. One thing
Floor being Floor.
Yeah, one thing I will say is it's really nice to hear you talk about the satisfaction of him being more reserved in the beginning and then kind of going for it a bit later in the song, because musically it's the same thing. I've said it countless times about this band, and often about Thomas's musical and emotional intelligence, is he is very brave in the sense that there is no trying to show off or do things, just for gimmicky sake. They're trying to build an emotional journey with the song. And, almost being 3 minutes in, you can see them really starting to kind of put their foot down on the pedal just a little bit at this moment. But it's taken a long time to do that. And you kind of feel like you've gone along with the journey with them. And it just is a real maturity to their approach to music.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue. I've gone back a few steps, so hopefully we'll be able to hear some of the stuff we were talking about. But really excited to see not only where this goes for kind of the last third of the song, but how they end it. I'm a big fan of when they've taken so long to build up to something, to see how they approach the ending, if they're going to be delicate, if they're going to be more sharp with that as well. So excited to see what happens.
Still untouched, I may hold another hand, while the hand still without a tool, drown into ice while they're still blind. Low while the night still hides the withering dawn.
Amazing.
Like the textural changes he puts in that last belt just make it so satisfying. You can hear that gradual build in the vocal choice all the way up until that final belt that he does. And it's nothing too crazy. He's just put a little bit of distortion into it. It's sitting right in the same spot. It's just transformed to like that next level. And it doesn't sound like he's killing himself to get there. That's awesome.
And that's something else. I mean, without knowing any of the sort of scientific and educational things behind the vocals, he does look very comfortable. He looks very happy when he's singing. He looks very like his posture and his body isn't starting to contort or bend over or do anything that would make it seem uncomfortable for him to get there. So your mind says he's either very well rehearsed or he's actually quite comfortable doing it. So nice to know that he is kind of looking after himself in that regard. I just realized now that he's actually, when I spoke about the pulsing of the bass, and just to a previous point where I mentioned about Thomas bouncing on the keys, so he's doing an up and down strum pattern, which gives him an easier placement for the next hit, but he's doing that as well to help keep the rhythm. If you take out those ghost notes and you just expect it to hit it on the click each time, you are going to drift off slightly, and that's why there was a slight separation at that one point. But now that he's into that rhythm, he's almost creating a false strum pattern to help make sure that he hits that note every time. They just know what they're doing.
It still hides the withering dawn. Whoa, kiss while your lips are
My goodness, my goodness. Just when you think it can't grow anymore, there it does. I'm going to go back to leading there because it seems like they're up in the intensity of the timing, so it's gone into like a double time effect there. I am noticing some small nice things, like evolution of pieces that I saw in the beginning but didn't quite understand the purpose of them. You're seeing what Troy's doing is he's doing these very light strums. He's got a lot of spatial effects on his lead work and and just the chords in general. So he's got a lot of reverb. He's probably got a bit of phasing on there as well. It sounds very dreamlike and spacey. And what he's doing quite delicately in the background is he's strumming down and then he's tapping the top string, which is creating like a very gentle rhythm. It's almost meant to not be audible on its own. It's meant to be a part of the percussive element of the song, and he's also doing it to keep the vibration of the strings going so that Ebo can do a bit more work. And when you play that kind of stuff, you almost are relying on your hammer-ons and pull-offs, which is how you create your intensity when you're playing lead work like that. And I think he's so underrated in the band. It's very easy to overlook him because of the amount of masters that you're seeing. But it wouldn't be a Nightwish song without Floor coming into the mix, and she's doing so there. I do have a question for you.
Yes.
So when singers, I've always spoken about how the marriage of their vocals is just perfect, and I'm such a big fan of that output, the overall kind of effect of them singing together. When singers harmonize with each other and they kind of, or whether they're harmonizing or providing amplification, how do they kind of pick at what level that harmony is going to sit? Because there are a number of ways you could go higher and lower to do that. And like, is it just a feel thing? Is it based on their own ability in terms of how wide their scale is, or kind of how does that decision get made?
I think it really depends on their experience singing together. So when you start to sing with another person, you're really having to listen and you get a feel for their voice. And a lot of the decisions come from that experience of singing with them. So they would have sung this song together, perhaps unamplified, because amplification changes everything. It's almost like, you know what it's like when you're on stage and you've only got an in-ear. It's like you're together, but you're not like acoustically together, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of space on a stage and there's distance between you, so your in-ear is sort of the only connection that you have with the rest of your band until, depending on how big the stage is, of course. It's sort of the thing that can keep you connected, as well as other forms of communication on stage. So the singing would really have to have been done before then, of them singing together, just to get accustomed to what level they want from each other's voice, because Flora is a very powerful vocalist, and the majority of her backup singing in this one has been really, really well balanced. And that is not, a coincidence. That is deliberate, because in this one, she's not the soloist. So that balance underneath means that whatever Marco decides to do on top of that, it stands out as the soloist sort of technique or texture or decision, whatever you would like to call it. So when they're harmonizing together, that would definitely be something that they would have had to have decided singing together, because it's hard to make those kinds of decisions on the fly if you're nowhere near each other. I had an experience with a gig with a vocalist that I had never sung with before, and we got together and we just spent 5 minutes singing a song that I knew he was going to harmonize in, and I didn't know what harmonies he was going to do, but we just sang and we adjusted in the sound check. And then from there, we're fine, we're sweet. Because once you know the intensity that it's meant to be with enough experience, and obviously these are professionals, they're professional singers, they're professional musicians, it becomes faster and faster to make those kinds of decisions and those adjustments that are necessary to make it sound good when you sing together. But yeah, it's definitely an experience. You have to be listening. Not enough people listen sometimes, and it shows. It really shows.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. Not enough people listen. But it is really nice to kind of, and I guess I take a lot of the lead from the vocals in terms of when a song feels like it is building, and it is building. It's building quite late in the song as well. It's evolving, and a lot of it is to do with somewhat the intensity and volume of some of the instrumentation, but a lot of it's to do with the vocals. Having Floor come in there, and she sounds like she's starting to balance out a little bit more. She was quite delicate and soft in the background, and now almost from a volume perspective, not quite as loud as Marco, but definitely not far behind. And it just feels like the vocal element of the song is building to almost lead it to a place where there is going to be some kind of like climax to how they approach the ending, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I'm liking is the way that this song has been written. It's very much about the lyric. Like there's no question of not being able to hear a word or not. Every phrase has intention, and that intention's being driven by the lyric. So as they're building, even though it's a repeat of the chorus, it's something we've heard before. So to have that build happening on sort of lyrical information that you've already gotten as an audience member, it drives home the meaning of those lyrics even more to build upon them in that moment. So I'm really enjoying this song. I know it's a little different from the other Nightwish songs that I've reacted to, which have always had that sense of drama and intensity to them at some point. And this one it's got its own drama and intensity, but the lyric to me is really sort of almost king to me in this arrangement, because it's everything around it sort of is supporting the intention of that lyric. And I guess they do that anyway in all their other songs, but particularly in this one because it is so kind of chill, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you got to,
like musically.
You've got a very good point there, because it's almost like prioritizing the melody, and then those, like you said, the lyric. It's not trying to be something it isn't. It's not trying to overplay or have too much drama to the sense where you get distracted. So you've got a very, very good point there. I'll go back just 2 more steps so we can hear it lead in again. But so far as well, just really beautiful and delicate with the visuals in the background as well. It just seems like a really nice moment in a show. I'm imagining this to be somewhere in the middle of the set where people can just have a breather from all of the really intense and energetic stuff that they also do.
Still red, while he's still silent rest, while bosom is still untouched, one veil, hold another hand, while the hands still without a clue, drown into ice while they're still blind. Now while the night still hides the withering dawn.
Wow, that was not how I thought it was going to end at all.
Yeah.
I thought there was going to
I'm
be...
so used to the...
Yeah. I thought there was going to be a kind of big moment, and then it was going to drift off with like a soft vocal or something like that. But they do this. They do surprise you. I think for them to have that... and again, this is a live version, so if there's a studio version that has potentially more drama to the end of it, maybe it links into another song after it. We're not sure, but it is quite special in terms of ending or surprising you with that lead work at the end and letting that just be the hero. I'm such a big fan of the chorus in this that you almost wanted more, and I think that sometimes the success of a song is when it leaves you wanting a little bit more and makes you want to kind of go back to the beginning and start again. One thing I will say musically is that when they upped that tempo, you could see Thomas bouncing again, creating that nice rhythm and percussion with the drums, but he's also obviously playing a melodic and instrument's got a lot of tonation, so you can hear that chord change in progression. But what Marco's doing is he's gone from that pulsing piece with the false drums in the middle to actually having like a double note hit, but it starts on the and, so it's on the and 1, and 2, and 3, and it almost leads into each piece, so it creates like a completely different vibe to the first 4 minutes of the song that we'd heard. And I just think it's really special. I think it's a delicate touch, just a very simple, nice touch to give us a little bit more towards the end, and pull you out of the really slow kind of dramatic tempo that we're playing.
Yeah, for sure. I must admit, the whole vibe of the song to me is, I keep banging on about the lyrics. There was actually another thing I wanted to mention very quickly. You know how I was talking about how singers don't listen with the... Not singers in general. Some singers need to listen more. That was an awful generalization there. Some singers need to listen more, not all singers. Sorry. But it could also just be the sound people as well, doing a really, really good job on whoever is doing sound for them between there. Because if there is a moment where, one of them's getting too loud or too intense, the sound guys, if they're worth their weight in gold, they're on it. They have that power there. But anyway, the general sense of the music, the vibe, to me, again, just meets up with that lyric intention, because this is the first time where I've actually been able to listen to the lyrics in depth as I'm reacting to it for the first time, because I often feel like they're so poetic. You need to have the lyrics printed out in front of you in order to sort of really dive into their meaning and the essence of the song, whereas in this one, I get a really strong sense of, you know, do what you can in the moment that you can, enjoy the moment, appreciate the time and space that you're in. And I get a lot of that in the arrangement of this song, of it being like, you know what, it's okay for us to rest in this like little musical moment at the end, and for it not to be fireworks all the time. Like, this is the present and the here and the now. And I find that really poignant. Like, I kind of like almost sad that the music is moving in such a way. And it's like, you know what, they're right. We can just like rest in this particular musical vibe for a moment, because something crazy will happen later, but for right here, right now, let's like just take a moment and think about what the lyrics mean. I think that's amazing. I don't know. The song is, I really like this song, actually.
Yeah, it sets such a nice mood. You know, when we spoke about doing this song, I stupidly didn't give enough thought to the title, but when Marco was talking about the song in the beginning, and he said, doesn't matter who you've got in your life, you know, kiss while your lips are still red, it kind of hits you in the chest. You go, oh wow, that's what he means by that.
Yeah.
And you know, if you kind of, like, to your point, ordinarily it's nice to have those lyrics up. I've done that for one or two songs like Poe and the Pendulum and things like that, where I've gone and read through the lyrics earlier just to give it the respect it deserves because of the story it has. But this one, they definitely allowed you to hear more of that and let it be, I guess, the hero, which is nice for a change, to have those vocals and lyrics be the hero and let the music be just a nice canvas behind that they can paint on.
Even though it's like a canvas behind, I still think that without it, like it built its own little like feeling within the song. So even though we like, oh, the music's behind it, it's like, no, I actually do think that the music behind it is also a critical part of the intention of the song. Yeah. So or at least I get that really strongly. But did you want to quickly just pull up the lyrics?
Have a look at it? Yeah, we can do.
Because I must admit, this is the first time where I've actually been able to hear the lyrics in like isolation, and for them not to be so poetic that I can listen and kind of understand what they're going for, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Let me know if that's kind of... I'll zoom in a bit for you just so you can...
Yeah, zooming in would be great. I have bad eyesight. That's so beautiful. Oh my God. Even just the kiss while your lips are still red, like there's a few ways that you can interpret that, but for me it's almost like do these passionate, sweet things while you're still alive. Just do it.
Yeah.
Because one day your lips won't be red. They'll be blue and cold and dead.
That's exactly it.
Listen to Nightwish.
You couldn't have put it more bluntly.
Live your life.
Live your life now.
Be passionate. Yes. Live in the present.
There couldn't be a more... There could not be a more poignant time to hear this as well, with the world in the state that it's in. Just to enjoy the moment, to not let it overwhelm you and take control and live through fear, to just be happy and content and grateful and thankful for what you have, but just also just live. Yeah.
God, I sound like all of those life gurus that I just...
Listen, Nightwish got us.
Much rather listen to Nightwish.
Yeah, Nightwish got us once again. So I really enjoyed that one. And again, thank you so much for doing this part 2 with me. Hopefully there's part 2 of many more, and we'll have a look at what we can do down the line, Nightwish or otherwise. I really enjoy these. I think it's like a massive learning curve for me, and I just think it just works. I think we have a completely different approach to the same thing, and I just think that the output of it's really nice, and really nice to see all the people's comments and to see how they've enjoyed it. And I'm sure you've probably got in equal amounts of people messaging asking for part 2. So glad we could finally do it, and really excited to get this one live.
And I loved seeing you on my channel as well, Chase.
Oh,
although they were feeling for you there with how infrequently I pause. So at least in this one, you were in charge of the pausing.
I was.
So...
And just a note to everyone out there, I had actually a funny comment. Someone said a unit of pause is a Carneson, and I'll take it. But I need to clear something up, because I've seen quite a few comments about, you didn't pause enough means you didn't like it. how many times I pause is not an indication of whether I like the song or not. Whether I like it or not is an indication. I think some songs require, especially with what I'm trying to do, giving small little bits of insights as to why people may like a certain song and may not understand it. Some songs are so complex and intricate that it requires more of me stopping so I don't forget. And other songs like this one is just so beautiful you almost don't want to stop because of how it's put together and how it's pieced together.
Yeah. And I mean, I cheat. I just get Caption Julia to fill in all the little details that I want for when I'm not pausing. So
listen, your work ethic is insane. The amount of editing you got to do after is intense. I'll take the lazy route.
It's not the same. I'm very lazy as well. But
Listen,
I want all of the information for the people that watch. So hopefully on this one I was able to articulate sort of what I meant.
Oh, completely. Don't worry about
different areas. So fingers crossed.
That was perfect.
But no, this is.
Can't wait to edit this and listen back to it, because that's when you kind of see the full value of all the things that, while you're doing all the tech stuff and recording, you don't know if you catch everything or not. So really happy for that one. I'm going to obviously put links to all of your stuff in the description, and definitely put a link to that part one.
Come check out the stuff.
Yes, please go and have a look at Julia's stuff if you haven't, which I'm sure you all already have. She is one of the best. And again, thank you for joining me on this journey, and hopefully there'll be something else down the pipeline that we can have a look at.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on here. I learn a lot about the music. It amazes me how many things you pick up in such a short amount of time, to be quite honest. So that's also really lovely for me to be able to hear and learn from. So thank you so much for having me on here and for us being able to have another little musical conversation. They're really fun, and I learn stuff. I love learning stuff. So this has been great.
Yeah, it's been awesome once again. For everyone else, thank you so much. Another Nightwish Saturday in the books. Until the next one, please be safe, be nice to each other, and have a damn good day.
Bye.